In this video, we'll be taking a look at two NFL games happening on September 23, 2024, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 4 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these two NFL games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Jacksonville Jaguars versus Buffalo Bills. The first of two Monday Night Football matchups is a compelling American Football Conference showdown between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills. These teams last squared off in London, where the Jaguars secured a 25-20 victory. Coming into this game, the Jaguars are reeling from a disappointing 18-13 loss at home against the Cleveland Browns, where they failed to cover as 3.5-point favorites. Meanwhile, the Bills come into this game well rested after a dominant 31-10 win over the Miami Dolphins last Thursday, easily surpassing expectations as 2.5-point underdogs. During the offseason, it seemed like I was among a select few in the NFL betting community who didn't jump at the chance to back the New York Jets to dethrone the Buffalo Bills at the top of the American Football Conference East. Now, just a couple of weeks into the season, it feels almost absurd in retrospect that the Jets were the favorites to win the division. While there were legitimate concerns about Buffalo's offense during the offseason, the Bills have adjusted quite well to life without Stephon Diggs. They've leaned heavily on an efficient running game and continued to rely on quarterback Josh Allen, who has once again led one of the league's top offenses, just as he has done since his breakout season in 2020. A major factor in Buffalo's success has been the influence of new offensive coordinator Joe Brady, who has implemented a more methodical approach to the offense. Through 2 weeks, the Bills have maintained the highest offensive success rate in the league, and they're showing no signs of slowing down. Despite my faith in Josh Allen and confidence in Buffalo's coaching staff, this Monday night game poses a tricky challenge for the Bills. While they are coming off a commanding 31-10 victory over the Dolphins, the game was much closer statistically than the final score suggests. In reality, the score could have been much different if not for a couple of costly turnovers by Miami quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Had those mistakes not occurred, the final margin would likely have been tighter, which could have affected the betting line for this game. Now, the Bills face a desperate Jacksonville Jaguars team, eager to avoid an 0-3 start after 2 disheartening losses to open the season. The Jaguars are far too talented to be winless, and they've encountered their fair share of bad luck in losses to the Dolphins and Browns over the past couple of weeks. Jacksonville's defense has largely held its own, limiting the Dolphins to just 20 points and giving the Jaguars a double-digit lead at 1 point in that game. Last week, they kept Cleveland's offense in check, allowing only 16 points, but it wasn't enough to overcome their offensive struggles. While Trevor Lawrence hasn't had the ideal start to the season, the young quarterback now faces a Bills defense that has already been plagued by significant injuries, especially in the linebacking core and secondary. Head coach Sean McDermott deserves credit for orchestrating a masterful defensive performance last week despite those injuries, but it remains to be seen whether they can maintain that level of play moving forward. This betting line initially opened with the Jaguars as 6-point underdogs, but it has since been bet down to 5 points, reflecting the belief among sharp bettors that both teams are due for a regression toward the mean. Jacksonville is backed into a corner, needing a strong performance to avoid falling to 0-3. Head coach Doug Peterson, a Super Bowl winning offensive mind, will undoubtedly work to get Trevor Lawrence and the offense on track. It's worth noting that Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals were able to score 28 points on this Buffalo defense earlier in the season, and the Miami game may have led to an overvaluation of the Bills' defense, as the Dolphins have historically struggled against Buffalo. Historically, only 4 teams that started 0-3 have made the playoffs since 1990, which makes this game far more critical for Jacksonville than it is for Buffalo. The Jaguars boast a formidable front line with Josh Allen and Travon Walker, and they'll focus on containing Bills running back James Cook. who had a breakout game against Miami. The Jaguars also have a rising star in wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr., yet another LSU product making waves in the NFL. Although Jacksonville is off to a 0-2 start, they easily could have beaten the Dolphins in Week 1 if not for a costly fumble by Travis Etienne Jr. at the goal line late in the game. If that play had gone differently, the media narrative and public perception surrounding the Jaguars would likely be much more favorable. In my opinion, Buffalo lacks the explosiveness on offense to consistently build large leads. While Josh Allen is a dynamic quarterback, the receiving core he's working with is not particularly threatening. On the other hand, Buffalo's defense is already dealing with several key injuries, which could open the door for Jacksonville to keep this game close. This is a critical moment for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars offense, and it feels like a good opportunity to buy low on Jacksonville. The Jaguars gave the Bills a tough challenge in London last season, and while both teams have changed somewhat, it's hard to ignore the possibility of another close, low-scoring affair. Therefore, the Jacksonville Jaguars to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Both of these teams have played solid defense through the first 2 weeks of the season. They're currently tied for 8th in the NFL in scoring defense, allowing just 19 points per game. Returning to Buffalo's receiving situation, it's difficult to overstate just how pedestrian this group is. The Bills lack a true vertical threat, which leads me to believe we won't see many big plays or long touchdowns in this game. Buffalo is aware of its limitations at wide receiver, which is why they've leaned on the running game, with 57.3% of their plays coming on the ground, the 5th highest mark in the NFL. Jacksonville, meanwhile, ranks 16th in run play percentage, utilizing the ground game on 44.76% of their snaps. Both defenses have been stout thus far. Even though the Bills are missing 3 of their top defensive players, they still rank in the top 10 in EPA per play, EPA per pass, and EPA per rush. Buffalo's defensive line has stepped up in a big way, with Daquan Jones, Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, and Von Miller all making significant contributions through the first 2 games. On the other side, Jacksonville's defense has been average against the pass but ranks 10th in both EPA per rush and opponent rushing success rate, positioning them well to slow down Buffalo's potent rushing attack. The total points line for this game opened at 46.5 but has since dropped by a point. Historically, the under has been a strong play in prime-time games, hitting at a rate of 58.4% over the past 5 years, and that figure climbed to nearly 70% last season, according to OddsShark. The defenses will play a significant role in this game, as both are allowing exactly 19 points per game to start the season. Buffalo held Miami to just 10 points in their last game, and their defense will be well rested after playing on Thursday in Week 2. Meanwhile, Jacksonville's defense has yet to allow more than 20 points, and they haven't been the reason for their 2 losses. A growing trend in the NFL is the use of 2 high safeties to eliminate deep passing plays, forcing teams to rely on the run or short passes, and this game is likely to follow that pattern. I expect Buffalo to rely heavily on the running game, which will shorten the game and reduce the number of possessions. This has the feel of a 24-20 game, or perhaps something in the 21-17 or 20-17 range. Therefore, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Washington Commanders versus Cincinnati Bengals. In Week 3 of the NFL season, we have an exciting and high-stakes matchup between the Washington Commanders and the Cincinnati Bengals. This Sunday's game, set to take place at Packer Stadium and broadcast nationally on ABC, is more than just another regular season contest. It represents a critical moment for both teams to prove they belong in the conversation for playoff contention. The Commanders currently stand at 1-1 following a narrow 21-18 victory at home against the New York Giants, while the Bengals are in a more desperate position, sitting at 0-2 after a heartbreaking 26-25 loss on the road to the Kansas City Chiefs. When discussing winless teams, no 0-2 team in the NFL poses a more significant threat than the Cincinnati Bengals. Despite their 2 losses, Cincinnati has been highly competitive, especially in their Week 2 clash with the reigning Super Bowl champions, Kansas City. The Bengals' defeat didn't feel justified, as a questionable pass interference call put Kansas City in range for the game-winning field goal, leaving Cincinnati's players and fans alike feeling robbed. Nevertheless, Joe Burrow and his teammates seem ready to shake off the frustrations and dominate in Week 3. Unfortunately for Washington fans, the next team in Cincinnati's path to redemption happens to be their very own Commanders. On the other side, the Washington Commanders do offer reasons for optimism. Led by young quarterback Jaden Daniels, a former standout in LSU, Washington's offense has shown flashes of potential. Daniels likely has a chip on his shoulder, eager to outshine Burrow, LSU's former star signal caller. Through 2 weeks, Daniels has impressed, completing 23 of 29 passes for 226 yards in the Commanders' win against the Giants, while also rushing for 40 yards. In Week 1, Daniels ran for 88 yards and scored 2 touchdowns on the ground, all without committing a turnover. Washington's ground game has been solid, too, racking up 215 rushing yards against New York, marking their second strong performance on the ground this season. Cincinnati, meanwhile, has struggled to contain the run, allowing an average of 160 rushing yards per game, which could give Washington an opportunity to control the clock and keep Burrow off the field. As we look ahead to this matchup between two quarterbacks who once played for LSU, it's clear these teams are operating on different levels. The Bengals cannot afford to start the season 0-3 if they hope to remain in the playoff hunt. Cincinnati has developed a reputation for slow starts, but this game feels like a pivotal point where they begin to turn the tide. Conversely, the Commanders are still finding their footing as a team, and despite their win against the Giants, they failed to score a touchdown, which doesn't bode well against a more formidable Bengals defense. Additionally, Daniels has yet to throw a touchdown pass in the NFL, making it difficult to trust him in this situation. Although the Bengals have yet to secure a win, their performance against the Chiefs was encouraging, taking Kansas City down to the wire and likely deserving a better outcome. Washington, on the other hand, has struggled defensively through the first 2 weeks, and that could spell trouble when facing a Cincinnati offense that's starting to hit its stride. It's also worth noting that the Commanders have a poor track record when playing as underdogs by 7 or more points, going 0-4-1 against the spread in their last 5 such games. The spread for this game is substantial, especially considering how many underdogs pulled off upsets last week. However, Cincinnati was unlucky not to come away with a win in Kansas City, and historically, the Bengals tend to bounce back strong after a loss. While I'm high on Washington's potential with Jaden Daniels at the helm, it's hard to ignore the fact that the Commanders barely squeaked by a struggling Giants team. In their only other game against a solid opponent, the Commanders allowed 37 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Bengals' talent level is closer to that of Tampa Bay than the Giants. Despite some logical arguments and tactical reasons to support Washington, particularly given the large point spread, it's hard to go against Cincinnati. The Bengals were considered legitimate Super Bowl contenders before the season started, and they'll be highly motivated to secure their first win of the year, especially returning home without a victory so far. Although one team is 1-1 and the other is winless, the Bengals are clearly the superior squad. This feels like a game where Cincinnati comes out with a sense of urgency and takes out their frustrations on Washington. So the Cincinnati Bengals to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Commanders' game plan will likely focus on establishing their running attack early, which will help set up the passing game for Daniels as the contest progresses. Cincinnati's issues stopping the run and their injuries along the defensive line will leave them vulnerable to Washington's ground game. However, the Bengals have been much stronger against the pass, allowing only one passing play of more than 20 yards so far this season. The Commanders rank 20th in offensive defense adjusted value over average, and Daniels averages just 4.4 intended air yards per pass, indicating he isn't testing defenses downfield often. Cincinnati's secondary will present a significant challenge in this regard. On the flip side, the Bengals' offense might still be hampered by injuries, as star receiver T. Higgins could miss this game or be limited if he does play. Even if Higgins suits up, he may not be healthy enough to make a big impact on Cincinnati's passing game, which needs a boost considering their struggles on the ground. While the Bengals have the 3rd highest passing rate in the league, they've been average in most other offensive metrics and need to find ways to be more efficient if they hope to turn things around. Neither the Bengals nor the Commanders have established a strong running game, which has contributed to their low-scoring output so far. Washington is averaging 20.5 points per game, while Cincinnati is putting up 17.5 points per game. Higgins' potential limitations due to injury and Daniels still adapting to the NFL as a starting quarterback could lead to another low-scoring affair. Both teams' defenses have held their own so far, and I don't expect either offense to light up the scoreboard. Ultimately, this matchup between the Washington Commanders and the Cincinnati Bengals is unlikely to be a high-scoring game. Both teams have shown similar tendencies on offense and defense, and neither has proven capable of consistently putting up big numbers. Therefore, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.